Hello and welcome back to the 2023 season of the Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge. I'm David Brown, an Associate Professor of Finance at the Eller College of Management at the University of Arizona. This month we're going to be going through an Excel esports case, which is not necessarily a financial model or a business case specifically, but more of a game that we can model in Excel using a lot of the skills that we developed to use in our studies and in our career. So this month we're going to be looking at a volleyball case that was used in the December 2022 finals of the Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge. So let's take a look at the file. All right, what we're looking at now is the first tab of this month's challenge. If you haven't downloaded it, you can get it from the XPrep portal, which you should have instructions from that when you signed up for the Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge. If you haven't signed up, go to fmworldcup.com and you should see links to the Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge and sign up there. So in this challenge, we're going to have a number of different levels. They're going to start easy and get harder as we go, and I'm going to walk you through how I approach each level and show you some of the tips and techniques that I can use throughout it. So let's go ahead and get in here. You'll notice that I have my keyboard tracking on the top right there, so please keep an eye if you see any shortcuts that you want to discover. And what we're going to start with is level 1. So if we scroll down a little bit, I'm going to go past the bonus questions. We'll get those in a minute. But level 1 asks us to add up how many points the Arizona team, so they're going to be the default team in this analysis, scored in the rallies. So if we look at our data here, we have our rallies numbered 1 through 10, and we're going to start out with rally scoring, where every time a rally is played or the ball is hit back and forth over the net, a point is scored. So in this case, we just need to add up the ones and zeros, essentially, to figure out how many total points Arizona scored. For example, here in example 1, they don't score a point in the first one. They do score on 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then not again until the 10th rally. So we can tell if we actually highlight all this, and we look down here at the bottom where I'm standing, and I get out of the way, you can see the sum down here of 5. All right, so this is built to use the sum function. So we can just use a simple sum, add up those numbers, and we get our answer. Now we can copy that down and fill in our answers, and once that happens, you see we get these green check marks. All right, that's letting us know that we got the answers correct so far. All right, so in these challenges, a lot of times this is built around speed. Now the bonus questions, if you're competing live, are only available to a couple of the participants. So it's important to get the bonus questions when you can. And in this case, you see that bonus 1 is asking how many total points did Arizona score across the entire level 1. All right, so that also is a sum function, but instead of going row by row, now we just select the entire range of the cells. So if we sum all that up, we get 110, and we've got our first bonus question. Now we can also do the second bonus question now. And a big part of this case is that we're going to have to switch from rally scoring to side-out scoring. Now in side-out scoring, you can only score a point if you served, which means you have to have won the prior rally to earn a point on the current rally, right? Because whoever wins the last rally serves the next time. So in this case, if we look at the first example, Arizona wouldn't score the first one. They lost the first rally, but they win the second rally. But because they wouldn't have served, because they lost the prior one, that wouldn't earn a point. They would only earn points on rallies 3, 4, and 5 here, so they would have gotten 3 points in this first level. All right, so how can we set this up? Well, we just kind of talk through the logic out loud that you only score a point in a given rally if you also scored a point in the prior rally. So we could use an if statement to say if both and the previous cell equals 1 and the current cell equals 1, then 1 for a point, otherwise 0. If we drag that across, Control R, and then take that down with Control D, now we have our total points scored. Except we also have to remember that for the first one, and I left a space here, we can just make that equal to the first cell because we know that Arizona scores first. So once we've done that, we can now come back to our bonus. I'll just move to the cell. Sometimes it's hard to pick a particular cell out. And now we can sum all those helper cells we just did. All right, so let's get down here. We'll sum that up, and we see that 60 points were scored. All right. That was kind of a big way to do it. We explicitly modeled out each point, whether it was won or lost, rather each rally, and whether it ended up in a point. So there's actually a little bit more elegant way we could do this. So the way I'm going to show you here is using the fact that we can multiply two things together in our sum function. So we know that the first point has to be a win, so a 1, and the one after it also has to be a 1. So if we build this as overlapping ranges, and we're not going to sum them up individually, we're going to actually multiply those together. All right, so if we do that, we should get the number of points scored in rallies 2 through 10. All right, we get 50 because we didn't do that first column, so if we add that in, now we've got it all in one cell, and we didn't have to do kind of all the helper calculations over here. So as you start working in Excel more and get more advanced, you can start thinking about how to solve questions quicker without having to use all this extra help that we did in this example here. So credit to Dim Early. That's his method for solving this one. All right, so if we go to level 2 now, we've got a couple bonuses in level 1. Now we can go to level 2. Now in level 2, you have a series of matches. So we're no longer looking at individual rallies in a single match. Now we're looking at who won each match. So this is over the course of the season, say matches 1 through 50. All right, and we have a series of matches and we can see our winners. And we want to know how many times a given team won. All right, so if we look through here visually, we can see that the A shows up in match 27, and then we don't have another A that shows up through the end. All right, so if we go to the beginning, how can we get that? Well, let's use a COUNTIF function. So we can use a COUNTIF, highlight the range we're interested in, and then what we want to find are the situations where it's an A. And we can see we get our 1. All right, so if we want to copy that, we can then Control-Shift down, Shift right arrow to highlight everything, and now Shift Tab right arrow if we just want the green cells. And then I'm going to paste my formulas down. I'm pasting formulas just so I don't overdo the formatting of it being green. And now we can see we got level 2 correct. We can go back up to level 1, and we see our current score is 380. So everything's moving along nicely. Now let's go look at level 3. All right, in level 3, we're going to look at which team scores 25 points first. All right, this isn't going to be completely solving who wins the first set, because we have to recognize to win the first set, you have to win by 2. So we'll build that in level 4. But what you can start to sense is that level 3 and level 4 are really closely related. And level 5 is going to be like level 4, except it uses side-out scoring rather than rally scoring. So when you have this kind of interrelation and dependency across levels, what's often best is to not treat the levels individually, but instead try to build a model that'll solve all the levels. So that's what we're going to work on next. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new tab. We're going to rename it Model. And here's where we're going to go build out our new model here. All right, so I'm going to first start out by making a control cell. So I want a cell that's going to control which version or which model I'm pulling in or which game number I'm pulling in. And so now I'm going to use an XLOOKUP to pull that actually into our game. So notice I'm starting in the middle here. I'm just giving myself some room to work. So let's do an XLOOKUP where I look up example 3. Where am I going to look it up? Well, over here in the case file. So we can look it up there. And what I want to get back is all this data that I'm going to use in the rest of the case and analyzing it. So I'm just pulling this in to make it easier to work with in a big case format. Now when I'm making this, I want to make it work for all the levels. So if I come back over here, notice that I want this range where I was looking up to go down further, right down to level 4 and also level 5. But level 4 and 5 also go way out here to column GX. All right, so we're going to adjust our formula a little bit so it's going to work in all those cases. So here, let's just make it a generic B. So we're going to look up in column B. And now instead of going from G to BD, we're going to go from G to GX. So now I'm pulling in more data than I need right now, but that's going to be okay. I'm not going to need it for level 3 here, but I will need it for levels 4 and 5. All right, so now that I have this data in, I'm going to label this so I know what I'm doing. So that's going to be the rally winner. And now I want to keep track of the points for A and the points for the other team. And you'll see why I'm setting this up as the other team in just a second, without necessarily making it based on ASU in this case. All right, so when we're in rally scoring, each time a rally is played, someone wins a point. So in this first one, ASU gets a point, then Arizona, 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 etc. All right, so the total points that Arizona has is going to be equal to what they had before. Notice I had that first cell set up ahead of time. Plus, if that cell above, and I'm going to lock the 6, is equal to A, right, if it's Arizona, then add 1. Otherwise, add 0. And now if I copy that down, right, now I don't want A anymore. I want ASU, so let's go back in. So I want to make it equal to, not ASU, right? If I made it equal to ASU, it's not going to work when we change to Oregon or Utah or Stanford or any of the other teams. So instead, we can just say not equal to A. All right, so not equal to A is going to work for any other team. And if we notice from the case, in every level, Arizona is involved. All right, so that's something that makes this case a little bit easier, that you can just deal with Arizona and then not Arizona. All right, now I want to copy these all the way to the right. But before I do that, let's actually go all the way to the right over here. And I want to hide all these other rows, right? All these other columns, rather, because I don't want to have to do this, where I go Control-Shift-Right arrow, and I go all the way to the spreadsheet. That's going to slow me down. So instead, let's go to the end of the range I know I want to work with, and then Control-Shift-Right arrow, and then Control-0 hides all that for me. So it's going to clean everything up to make it much easier to work with. So now I can copy my formulas to the right, and let's just eyeball to make sure they're working. One thing that I'm going to do is select the entire spreadsheet here. So Control-A twice did that for me, and then Alt-HAC centered everything for me. All right, and actually this first one, I'm going to make left justified column A, but everything else I want centered so I can see that it's all in the same column, and it's just easy to visualize. All right, so now I got the points for each one, and I'm getting closer to getting a formula set up for what is the answer to level 3. And so let's go back and review that again. With level 3, what I'm trying to get is which is the first team to reach 25 points first. All right, so if I need to know the first, well, we're going to need to know what the max of the 2 scores are and what the min of the 2 scores are. So let's set this up. Max of the first 2, min of those 2, and that'll give me an idea of when somebody has reached 25 points. All right? And now I can get ready to set this up as a data table. And the reason is I can come over here and see my answer, right? We can visually look for this. When is the first time that a 25 shows up? All right, the first time here is in this game, and we could then add up our 25 and our 16, and that'll give us our answer of 41. And if we go back to our case, sorry, I'm getting ahead. Level 4, the answer is 41. And level 3, we just want to know who gets to 25 points first. All right, so let's solve the easier one first, and then we'll get back to the harder one. So in this case, who got to 25 first? Well, we can look up when the 25 occurred, and then see which team won that point. So in this case, we can just look up 25 in this row and return the A here. So let's set that up. Come over here. Just need an answer cell, so we're going to do an X lookup. We're going to look for 25 in our max column, and we want to return our team column. All right, so A won that one. And now I want to build a data table. So I'm going to make 20 rows because there are 20 questions in this level, starting with game 41. And now I'm going to build my data table. And what it's going to do is it's going to come up here to the example 3 file, or input, and it's going to change that to a 41. And it's going to get me a new answer that A wins that one. And then it's going to do it for 42, and then 43. All right, so this is how a data table works. It's essentially doing a scenario analysis for us. So I'm going to put this back to example 3 and come down here and run our data table, Alt-AWT. There's our input. Oh, I put a parentheses at the end of it. Let's try that again. Be careful that you actually hit the right keys. All right, there we go. Now we're on example 3. I'm going to hit F9 to refresh the values, and now I have the answers. And I should be able to copy these and then paste values into level 3. And we see that we got all the questions correct. All right, now we can move on to level 4. All right, so now we're on to level 4. So we could scroll down, and remembering that here we're trying to figure out how many total rallies were played in the first set. So we got to figure out when the game ends, when somebody has at least 25 points and wins by at least 2, and then figure out how many points were played or how many rallies were played in that set. So let's go back to our model. And now we're going to build a couple extra columns here to help us out. So we have our max and our min, and we also want to keep track of our margin and the rally number that we're in. So our margin is just going to be the difference between the max and the min. And our rally number, here we can use the sequence function to get a row of 200. So let's just copy our margin over. And now what we want to do is we want to find the first time that this max number is at least 25 and the margin's at least 2. So one way to do that is we could create a column here that says when. And we can say equals if and the max is greater than or equal to 25 and the margin is greater than or equal to 2, well then give me a 1, otherwise give me a 0. And we can copy that all the way to the right. And if we scroll to the right, we go a ways here, and we can see there at game 41, we see our first 1. And so if you want to, you can now use something like a lookup function or an XLOOKUP to find 1. And notice that there are lots of 1s, but it's going to find the first 1. So, for example, we could set this up and say equals XLOOKUP for a 1 in that column, and then return back the rally number that we're in. And we've got our answer of 41 there. We could then build our data table. So let's do another sequence, starting at 61 this time, because that's the first game of level 4. And now we can do our data table. And we're going to tab and then come up here. And we've got our data table working, so we can see we've got all of our answers. And let's actually just check that those are right real quick. So let's take them over to our case, pasting our values, and we have them all correct. All right, so that was one way to do it. We had to build this extra column here that was when. But there are actually going to be quicker ways to do that if you don't want to go through all that modeling. So this is a bit of an advanced technique, but I want to show you again kind of how Diarmuid Early approached this. So let's actually delete that. So we'll rebuild our data table in a second. And we're going to use a filter function now instead. All right, so to set up our filter, we want to know what array we want to filter. So in this case, it's the rally numbers, because that's what we want back. And we're going to filter it on cases when both the maximum is greater than or equal to 25. All right, that's one condition. But we also want that margin to be greater than or equal to 2. So the way we do this is we're going to put this in parentheses, and we're going to put a multiplication between these. This multiplication is effectively a logical AND statement. All right, and this is just the syntax of how this filter argument is going to work. So we can do an AND on the margin, greater than or equal to 2, and let's see what we get. All right, we got a big sequence here. So basically everything that was a 1 in what we saw before, now, in this case, so everything that was a 1, it starts at game 41. Everything that's a 1, now we're just getting the game numbers here in our filtered function, right? But we don't want the whole sequence, we just want the smallest one, the one that comes first. So we can then wrap this in a min function. So if we get the min, we get that same 41. We do our data table just as before, and we get our same answers. So that's a way to do it that's going to save you a little bit of time if you don't want to model out this if statement. But it's doing the same thing, right? The AND logic that we had built here in the if statement is now all just happening within this filter function, all in one step. From a modeling perspective, it's great to split things out as best as possible for other people to understand it. From a speed perspective and trying to do well at Excel Esports, a lot of times it's quicker and more efficient to build functions like this, although they can get really hard to track, so I wouldn't do this in a model that you're building for your boss, for example. All right, so we have our answers to level 4. So let's go back and check now on level 5. So level 5 is the same idea, except now we're switching to side-out scoring. So you can only score a point if you served, and we're also only going to 15 points in the first set. All right, so that's our challenge. So we're going to adapt our model to that. And so the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what level we're on. All right, this is going to be helpful because I want to build this model flexibly so it's still going to be correct when we're looking at levels 3 or 4, but that it also works in level 5. But I need to know what level we're on to do that. So let's do an XLOOKUP here, where we look up whatever game we're in. We can look that up. If I go to the bottom here, for example, in this set, and then we can return the level here that we have right here. And I don't care yet what those references are. It didn't work for me, but I'm just going to come in and again get rid of the row numbers and just look column B versus column C. And I see that we have level 3 for example 3. If I come in here and change this to example 5, now we have level 5. So that gives me a little power in that I can base my next formulas off of that. Because what changes is how these points are awarded. So I'm going to make a little bit of room here, and I'm going to insert 2 rows to figure out first who serves, and then whether a point was won on that rally or not. All right, so we know who serves first always is Arizona. So A starts there. And then whoever serves the next rally is going to be who won the last one. So we can just reference the previous cell. So let's drag that across. All right, and now when is a point won? So what we want to do in this formula is basically figure out whether a point was won or not. So we know if it's level 5, right? Notice we're locking our cells again. Kind of funny that we're doing F4 to lock the F4. If it is level 5, we just want to test, is the server equal to who won the rally? If it's not rally scoring, or if it's not side out scoring, and it's rally scoring, well then we just want the value true, because it's whoever won the rally. There's always a point earned. So right, we have false there. If we drag this across, we see that we only have points won when the team that served is the one that won the rally. So that looks good. So now we just need to update our formula down here. And now we can say, okay, we only get a point if there's a true there. So we can say previous value plus if it's A and that value is true. So we just add an extra logical condition here to see when we get the points for team A. And then same here, we can put that same logical in, that after that piece, if the scored point equals true, then we get a rally point. And we can copy those right, and let's see if they make sense. So we see 3 points awarded to Arizona. That looks good. And then ASU wins a couple points as well on their serve. So it looks like it's working okay. Now we should be able to use this same formula we had before, right? The difference now is that we needed to go to 15 points instead of 25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit, I'm in the formula, so I'm going to hit F2 to get in the formula, Control A to copy the formula itself, just select it rather, Control C to copy it, I'm going to come over here and paste it. So I'm doing that way my cell references didn't move at all. All right, and I'm going to come in here and change this to 15, like I said, and the game should end at 36. Let's see if that's our example answer, if we got that right. 36 is our answer, so that looks good. Let's go ahead and build our data table. So another sequence here of 20 numbers, starting at 81, our last level. Build our data table again. All right. We have our answers. Let's copy them over and see if we're right. All right. We get our green check marks, and we're feeling pretty good. Let's go all the way back up to the top then, and we see that we have 1,120 points. The only thing left is the last bonus. All right, so the bonus is saying in the level 4 games, all right, we already finished level 4, and our model is built flexibly enough to be able to handle that. So we need to switch our model back to level 4, and we got to figure out how many points are scored by Arizona in the first 2 sets. So everything we've done so far has been built on 1 set. We have to build some logic in for 2 sets now. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's come over here and insert our row. I'm going to switch this example to example 4. That way we're looking back at level 4 again. And now we need to keep track of what set we're in. So I'm going to put an initial value. We started set 1. So now when does the set change? It's going to change when we have a winner, right? And we actually already have this win column here, so we can go ahead and use that. So we can say equals previous set plus, and I'm actually going to use the prior value of whether there's a win or not. because I don't want the set to change until the win has actually occurred. So let's go ahead and put that in. So if I build it that way and I copy it to the right, let's check for our first instance to see if we get a win. All right, so if you recall, 41 was the rally number that the game ended on for our example here. And so we see then for rally 42, it starts at game 2, or set 2 now. All right, so it looks like our logic's working there, except it just keeps on going up to set. And we know that's not the case. We have to reset the scores. So to do that, we have to come back and change our scoring logic. All right, so we're going to make our edit to our scoring logic up here. All right, because we start at 0 for the first set, we got to restart at 0 for that second set. All right, so here our logic basically says, take the previous value and add to it whenever you score a point. But we also have to be careful to only take that previous value if you're still in the same set. So we can say if the set you're in now is equal to the set you were in last point, then go ahead and add D9. Otherwise, reset to 0. All right, so let's put that logic in on both of these. So again, we're just checking, is the current set the same as from the last point? If it is, then carry the total points from the last time over. Otherwise, reset to 0. And if we copy that all the way to the right, let's see what we get. So we should be able to go to game 41 to test it. So there's game 41. And we see that, rally 41. When we get to rally 42, we see our points reset. All right, we were down to 0 and 1 because ASU won the point. And we see our set reset to 2. And we can actually go forward now and see if our logic's working. So in this case, we can see here's the end of set 2. And we see that U of A won 25-20 and 86 total points were played. But that wasn't quite the question, right? The question was how many points were played by Arizona in those first 2 sets. Well, now that we have the sets labeled, we can go back over here and we can think about doing a count ifs to determine that. So let's use a count ifs. We're going to count if first, if an Arizona point was earned, right? This is going to work because we're doing rally scoring, not side out. We also want to check if it's the first 2 sets. So let's just select our sets here, and that has to be less than or equal to 2. All right, so if we get those 2 criteria, we see that Arizona scored 50 points across the first 2 sets in our example case. So now we just have to do that for all of our cases here. We're starting at 61 for level 4. Do our data table. You can see data tables are a skill we're going to use a lot. Let's see, where'd it go? There it is. We hit enter. And the last thing we got to do is sum all this up. So we sum that up, 954. Let's copy that, go back to our case, paste our values, and we have our last answer. All right, so we worked through the model. Again, we tried to build our model as generically as possible here on this tab. That way it could handle levels 1, 2, and 3. Levels 3, 4, and 5. And still get the answers while making small adjustments. That way we can reuse a lot of our logic. And that's how you want to approach these esports cases. Reuse as much as you can. Make your model flexible. That way it's quick to go between levels. Again, these are some pretty advanced modeling techniques that I've shown you here. You don't have to digest them all right now. Just take little bits and pieces with you to the next round. And as you keep progressing, you're going to learn more of these and just keep getting better. So I hope you enjoyed this month's volleyball challenge. Stay tuned for everything else that's coming. We'll have a new challenge coming out in June throughout the summer. So encourage your friends to get signed up. And we're eventually building to that big online competition in September and October that'll ultimately determine our finalists who will come here to Tucson on December 2nd for our live Excel Esports battle here for the championship and the $10,000 first prize. So see y'all then. Good luck and happy modeling.